Seven realities. Oh, why don't you read if you can see?
I'll take my book and read. Okay.
Sure.
Jai Baba.
Jai
The
Baba.
seven realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following seven realities. Number one, the only real existence is that of one and only God, who is self in every finite self. Number two, the only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. Number three, the only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. The only real renunciation is that which abandons in the midst of worldly duties all selfish thoughts and desires. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward. When compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. The only real control is the discipline of senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. The only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Dar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Thank you. So, yesterday we finished the third part of removal of sanskaras. Any questions on that? Before that, we'll just see on Trello the. Oops, it's gone to the wrong place. Yeah. So impressions from Sadhguru transform life, and I think that was a big takeaway that we learned, right? So even the wiping is done through introduction of some impressions into the drop soul, wiping out of all sanskaras through the intervention of a Sadhguru, and then there was a lot of focus on three things: self-surrender, intellectual obedience, and literal obedience, the two types of obedience, and finally the role of Sadguru, right? So, interesting but small chapter. Any questions here? Any insights? Any discussions? No.
A
Good.
little technical.
Please go ahead.
In references, you
Mhm.
have these bullet points, I would call
It's a mistake. That's what I noticed. So this is actually essence of the chapter. I don't know how
it.
this
Yes.
happened. I'll fix it.
And against that, copy, make, template, all that is irrelevant.
Which one?
Impressions from Sadhguru
No.
transform.
These are not connected. These are actions for the whole card.
Okay.
Anyway, more on that when we get to Trello, right? But this should not be under references, and I will switch that. I don't know how that has happened. Because let's see what happened in this. See, it's all essence of the chapter in other places. I don't know how this happened. Okay. Because I used a template and created all the cards, but We'll figure it out. I just noticed as we open this. Okay, so let's continue reading then. Page number 61 on the physical book, Good and Evil. So we'll probably read as much as we can and then spend half an hour on Trello. Yeah. Good and Evil, Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Subtitle, Evaluation of Experience Through Opposites. The human mind is not only going through experiences, but is constantly evaluating them. Some experiences are regarded as agreeable and some disagreeable. Some experiences are found to bring happiness and some suffering. Some experiences are perceived as being pleasant and some unpleasant. Some experiences are apprehended as restricting the life of man and some as leading it toward fullness and freedom. And some experiences are looked upon as being good and some bad. These are the opposites created by human imagination when it is meeting life with a particular point of view. Acceptable and unacceptable. Man's conception of what is acceptable or unacceptable goes on evolving and changing according to the nature of desires that happen to be dominant at any particular moment. But as long as there is any kind of desire in his mind, he is impelled to appraise his experience in relation to that desire and divide it into two parts. The one contributing towards its fulfillment and therefore acceptable, and the other tending to prevent its fulfillment and therefore unacceptable. Instead of meeting life and all that it brings without expectation, entanglement, or shirking, the mind creates a standard whereby it divides life into opposites, one of which is regarded as acceptable and the other as not acceptable. Of the opposites created by the human mind, the division between good and bad is spiritually most significant. Subtitle is Even Good is Relative to Desire. It is based upon man's desire to be free from the limitation of all desires. I'll read again. So the subtitle is Even Good is Relative to Desire. Of the opposites created by the human mind, the division between good and bad is spiritually most significant. It is based upon man's desire to be free from the limitation of all desires. Those experiences and actions that increase the fetters of desire are bad, and those experiences and actions that tend to emancipate the mind from limiting desires are good. Since good experiences and actions also exist in relation to desire, they also bind in the same way as do bad experiences and actions. All binding can truly disappear only when all desires disappear. Therefore, true freedom comes when good and bad balance each other and become so merged into each other that they leave no room for any choice by the limited self of desire. Any questions or thoughts?
Karthik, here
Yeah.
I was unable to understand a bit. These experiences and actions that increase the fetters of desire are bad. So what is the actual meaning of it? Fetters word, I'm unable
Yeah, fetters is, I think, chains, but let's check it out. Chain, yeah. Chain or shackle placed on the feet.
Okay.
So basically bonding or chains.
So those experiences and actions that increase the fetters or binding of desire are bad. And those experiences and actions that tend to emancipate the mind from limiting desires are good. Okay. No, is it the way we think, or is it what Baba is telling us?
So earlier paragraph was the way we think. This
Yes.
paragraph is what Baba is saying.
Okay, okay.
That's why it's confusing. I also
Yes.
struggled with that. Yes. Yeah. And that's why
Karthik,
I wanted to pause. Yeah.
There's one more thing. The last line,
Yeah.
does it relate to the zero sum game? I think it does, because ultimately we are leading towards the balancing of our sanskaras to
And
zero.
goes the accountant. You're right.
I
Therefore,
can't
true
quit.
freedom.
I think that way.
Therefore, true freedom comes when good and bad balance each other and become so merged into each other that they leave no room for any choice for the limited self of desire. Yep, very good. So I'll continue then. Man starts with animal sanskaras. Although in humans, consciousness is fully developed, one finds in it a preponderance of bad elements. Since at the subhuman stages of evolution, consciousness has been chiefly operating under limiting tendencies like lust, greed, and anger. The experiences and actions created and sustained by such egocentric tendencies have left their imprints on the developing mind, and the mind has stored these imprints in the same manner as film records the movement of actors. It is therefore easy to be bad and difficult to be good. Animal life, from which human consciousness emerges, is mostly determined by animal lust, animal greed, and animal anger, though some animals do at times develop the good qualities of self sacrifice, love, and patience. If all the accumulated animal sanskaras had been bad and none good, the appearance of good tendencies in human consciousness would have been impossible. Need for cultivating good sanskaras. Though some animal sanskaras are good, most are bad. So at the start, human consciousness finds itself subject to a propelling force that is mostly bad. Right from the beginning of human evolution, the problem of emancipation consists in cultivating and developing good sanskaras so that they may overlap and annul the accumulated bad sanskaras. The cultivation of good sanskaras is achieved by fostering experiences and actions opposite to those that predominate in animal life. A mic has to go on. Somebody's mic is. The opposite of lust is love. The opposite of greed is generosity. And the opposite of anger is tolerance or patience. By trying to dwell in love, generosity, and tolerance, man can erase the tendencies of lust, greed, and anger. Sinner and saint. The general process of freeing oneself from the limitation of sanskaras has therefore to be accompanied by the process of renouncing the bad for the good. But whether a person appears to be good or bad at any time, at any given time, is dependent upon the inexorable operation of his sanskaras. From this point of view, the sinner and the saint are both what they are according to the laws operative in the universe. They are both the same beginning and the same end. The sinner need not have the stigma of eternal degradation, and the saint need not have pride in his moral attainments. No one, however saintly he may be, has attained the heights of moral virtues except after a life of moral failings. And no one is so bad as to be unable to improve and become good. Everyone, no matter how depraved, can gradually become better and better until he becomes the best example for all mankind. There is always hope for everyone. No one is utterly lost, and none need despair. It remains true, however, that the way to divinity lies through the renunciation of evil in favor of good. Okay. Limited self lives in good sanskaras as well as bad. The gradual unfoldment of good brings in its train love, generosity, and peace. The good sanskaras deposited by the manifestations of these qualities overlap and balance the opposite bad sanskaras of lust, greed, and anger. When there is an exact balancing and overlapping of good and bad sanskaras, there is at once a termination of both types and the precipitation of consciousness from a state of bondage to a state of freedom. The credit and debit sides must be exactly equal to each other if the account is to be closed. But usually, either the debit side is greater or the credit side is greater, and the account is kept running. It is important to note that the account is kept running not only by an excess of the debit side, but also by an excess of the credit side. It can be closed only when the two sides balance each other. In the field of sanskaras, such balance is a rare happening because at any particular time, either the good or bad sanskaras are predominant. Just as the account can be kept running by an excess on either the debit or credit side, the life of the limited self is prolonged and sustained through the excess of either bad or good sanskaras. The limited self can linger through good as well as bad sanskaras. What is required for its final extinction is an exact balancing and overlapping of the bad and good sanskaras.
So
Balancing.
here,
Yeah, go ahead.
hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here, one aspect is difficult to gather. Say the last sentence of the second paragraph, it remains true, however, that the way to divinity lies through the renunciation of evil in favor of good. So if we keep doing that, how does the balancing happen? Because in the last paragraph, he says both has to be balanced over a period of time.
Yes.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Mamaji, there's also something known as your past sanskaras, which is the opening balance. Of course, again, I'm using the accounting. See what happens. Your mind, your mental sphere stores the past sanskaras. That is an opening balance. And then you have good and bad. So debit and credit. So there's also an opening balance.
I understand what you're saying, Ashok, but I still, Mamaji's question is still correct, right? So if the goal is to get to a zero, how does the process of good, how is it better to still have renunciation of evil and still have some good? So I think, good question. So the answer is basically that you will not make, I'm just guessing here, right? So you will not make progress spiritually with a balance of evil, but you will make progress spiritually when your balance of good is higher. So it's like having a credit balance.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
I think in the previous paragraphs, first, one important thing to note is Baba talks about lust, greed, anger. Lust of the gross body should be converted to greed of the subtle body to generosity, and anger of the mental body to compassion or tolerance. So that is going from selfishness to selflessness. But both come under the domain of duality, bad and good deeds. So here in this particular statement, we are in the process of reincarnation. Evolution is over because evolution is about only sanskaras, which means we are carrying lust, greed, and anger through the animal kingdom. So that is easy to understand. So in the reincarnation state, which means when you are in the human being state, we have to convert this lust, greed, and anger into love, generosity, tolerance. So that is kind of balancing. It's not neutralizing, okay? It is just balancing. Ultimately, only the Sadguru or avatar can actually erase all the sanskaras. Remember reading about organic sanskaras and inorganic sanskaras, natural sanskaras and unnatural sanskaras. So, what happens is that the whole idea is you're going from coarser desires to finer desires, which is also okay because even the desire for God realization is a desire, but it is the only one real good desire because it is like removing the spiritual headache or cancer called the ego thinking mind ego disease. So the only desire that one should have is what they call as longing for union with God or the divine beloved, or you can call it a better way is to surrender. As you know from the last chapter of God as infinite love, you have to even stop longing for emancipation because that is the job of the Sadguru. So that is why in the mental world you are supposed to completely surrender. So I think in this context, what we can only do is balance the sanskaras, good and the bad sanskaras from evolution to good sanskaras as a human being because of our intelligence, human intelligence, and then slowly when you are in the path of involution, either veiled or unveiled, then the final step is the Sadguru will then give us a liberation by completely erasing all the sanskaras. Because final conclusion is only by the life coach, the PhD guide. So that is what Baba is doing for us. Hey, Baba.
With this, what I gather is that mankind, as we are in the process of reincarnation, we have such a great load of bad with us that any good that we do is going to minus that account very, very marginally. So keep doing good so that you will reach a balance sometime. So that good will never get, say, over and above the bad that we might have done. Sadguru will take us from there to a clear balancing stage, I think. Yeah, Baba.
So, yes. So our job is only to be an intelligent actor. We have been given a role. Our job is to perform to the best of our ability based on our intelligence and whatever messages we have from our teacher or guru. The whether the movie is going to be a hit or not is not up to us. So
Yes.
whether you're going to win the Oscar award doesn't matter. The only important thing that matters is are we creating our action and experiences in a uh, in a way that is unwinding sanskaras, which we call as intelligent action, responding and
There's one more thing I wanted to highlight. There's a mention somewhere in the discourses that only the same and similar types of good and bad negate each other. There's a,
Mhm.
Yeah.
if we go deep into the semantics of the language, then it will become very confusing. So the best thing is use Vivek and Vairagya, use our intuition, and leave it to Baba. Jai Baba.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Can I ask something here? A very
Of course.
fundamental question. Doing
Sure.
good, that means, would mean something like what Mother Teresa did? Something like that, taking care of the needy, taking care of the downtrodden. What is doing good? Can someone say something?
Jai Baba, I think my understanding doing good. See, when you're talking about deeds, see, there are a couple of words here. One, here in this chapter, there is a usage of experiences and action. Okay. And then you're also talk about doing. So doing is a form of deed. Now, action, we know from our prayer of repentance, is thinking, speaking, and doing, which creates weak, strong, powerful sanskaras. That is one side. Now, based on the sanskaras, we experience something. So either it will create new sanskaras or it will unwind the sanskaras. Okay, whatever the experience, response, or a reaction. So I think what you're talking about is the selfless service of a karma yogi, or the devotion or love aspect, pure love aspect of bhakti yoga, or the jnana yoga through knowledge. So all these three are basically a form of doing, depending on the context, depending on the consciousness of the particular spiritual aspirant. So the degree of consciousness that that particular spiritual aspirant has. So doing can be any of these three, whether it's through the head, jnana yoga, heart, bhakti yoga, or hands, karma yoga, or a permutation combination of this. So it's all going to be unique, as Baba said in that practical mysticism, that each individual has a certain role to play in each of the life cycle, and then ultimately, will get emancipated. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Great. So I'll continue. Balancing and overlapping good and bad sanskaras. The problem of the exact balancing and overlapping of the good and bad sanskaras is not a mathematical problem of matching equal amounts. If it were purely a question of equal quantities, it could be solved solely through the persistent accumulation of the good sanskaras. If there is a cessation or slowing down of the accumulation of bad sanskaras, and if side by side there is an unceasing accumulation of good sanskaras at a greater rate, sooner or later the good would be a quantitative match for the accumulated bad, and they would effect the necessary balancing. For emancipation of consciousness, the good and bad sanskaras have not only to balance each other in strength, but there has to be a point to point overlapping of the one opposite by the other. So, in a sense, the problem before each center of consciousness is a specific problem relating to the quantitative variety of the nature of accumulated sanskaras. Transference of
Sorry to interrupt. Could you read the last line? I think it is qualitative, not quantitative. Can you read the line again, please? The last line.
So, in a sense, the problem before each center of consciousness is a specific problem relating to the qualitative variety of the nature of accumulated sanskaras. Sorry, did I say quantitative?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I have a question. Can I ask a question? How do we measure or negate qualitative, and how do we define qualitative? That's a very tricky one.
No, here the reference is qualitative variety of the nature of accumulated samskara. So you have so many different, great plethora of different types of sanskaras which are there. So we have to say match each one in different say times in our life over the different generations also. So that is what is referred to here, I think. Qualitative variety of the nature of accumulated sanskaras. It is not the qualitative aspect of each sanskara as such.
Yeah. Yes, actually, each type has to be balanced separately. Actually, that's what it means. Yeah. See, the greed cannot be compensated by compassion, for example. Greed has to be compensated by charity. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, I think it's my understanding is that it's like the objective and subjective. So let's say somebody, we slap somebody. Now, the sanskaric balancing is, if we slap somebody, we got to get slapped to neutralize that. Now, the question is that if somebody slaps us, is the quality of the slap similar to the one that we slap the other person? You know, I think in the material world, suppose I borrow $100, I pay back $100. So there is a equal aspect there. It's a quantitative aspect, but qualitative is very difficult for us to measure. So that is the analogy I look at. You know, that we can keep doing good deeds, and hopefully it will keep reducing our bad samskaras. But ultimately, only the Sadguru can do the final cleansing. There is an example which I mentioned earlier, which I'll quickly say. It's an analogy. I think remember that story about horse killer who has killed 99 people, and then he becomes, he meets a Sadguru and he confesses that he has done a wrong thing. What should he do? So the Sadguru tells him that just sit here and, and don't get up, like just focus on me. And one day a man walks, rides on that particular path, and this guy is blocking him. So the horseman tells him, move out of the way. And this guy says, like, sorry, I can't, I have to stay here. So there's an altercation, and there is a fight. And because of his past samskara, he kills the rider. And immediately this murderer becomes self-realized or gets liberated. So what is the moral of the story is that the Sadguru knew what was going to happen, and why he became liberated was the horseman had a message for another kingdom. He was going from one kingdom to the other with a message to, to hang 100 people who were in a prison in the other kingdom. So by saving those 100 lives, and because he had killed 100 people, it got neutralized. Only the Sadguru knows it. So this is the analogy of, the samskaric qualitative and quantitative balancing. Only a Sadguru will be able to completely erase all the samskaras through qualitative aspects. Cheba.
Yes, I think in summary, the takeaway from here is what I said earlier itself, that we have a backlog of so much of bad evolutionary sanskara in the form of lust, greed, and anger, and etc. So we should keep doing good. We should not think of I have done something good and it has balanced something out, so I am become zero. So it will happen over a long period, and maybe the final wiping out of the account is by the Sadguru. So that is the takeaway from here, I think. Hey Baba.
Said, perfectly said.
Jai Baba. Perfect. So let me continue. Transference of ego to good sanskaras. If the accumulation of good sanskaras proceeds irrespective of the specific constitution of the existing ones, there is a possibility of accumulating in some directions an excess of good sanskaras side by side with the existence of the bad of a different type. For example, through self-mortification and severe types of asceticism, some forms of attachment might be annulled, but other forms of attachment may remain untouched by these practices and may continue to exist. The aspirant is not only likely to ignore the forms of attachment that have remained untouched, but he may even carry on further his practices of self-mortification and asceticism by the propelling force of the sanskaras created by these very practices. In such cases, an excess of good sanskaras is being created without termination of the limited ego. Even if the other forms of attachment remaining untouched are subsequently undone, the ego can get transferred to these new good sanskaras and continue to live through them. I hope that's clear. So, need for adjustment of sanskaras. Emancipation is not a matter of mere accumulation of virtue. It requires intelligent adjustment of sanskaras. Each center of consciousness is unconsciously gravitating toward the final emancipation of truth realization, and there is a natural tendency of the mind to invite to itself just that opposite which would meet the spiritual requirements of the situation. But it is not a mechanical and automatic process that can be left to itself, independent of intelligent and right effort on the part of the aspirant. More often than not, the aspirant finds it impossible to strike upon the really needful unless he has the good fortune to have the unfailing help of a perfect master who alone has a direct and unerring insight into exactly what is required in a specific case. We can go back to the analogy, right? So that's exactly what is being said. So you'll never understand. And of course, he has the perfect vision and is able to make the right intervention. Prison of the good. It has been seen that good sanskaras can be the medium for the lingering life of the limited self. When a person looks upon himself as being good and not bad, he is engaged in self-affirmation through identification with this conviction, which is a continuation of separative existence in a new form. In some cases, this new house the ego constructs for itself is more difficult to dismantle because self-identification with the good is often more complete than self-identification with the bad. Identification with the bad is easier to deal with because as soon as the bad is perceived as being bad, its grip on consciousness becomes less firm. The loosening of the grip of the good presents a more difficult problem since the good carries a semblance of self-justification through favorable contrast with the bad. However, in the course of time, the aspirant gets tired of his new prison house, and after this perception, he surrenders his separative existence by transcending the duality of good and bad. Good compared with evil. The ego exchanges the abode of identification with evil for the abode of identification with good, because the latter gives it a greater sense of expansion. Sooner or later, the aspirant perceives the new house to be no less of a limitation. Then he finds that the process of breaking through it is less difficult than the process of breaking through the former abode of identification with evil. The difficulty concerning the abode of evil is not so much in perceiving that it is a limitation, but in actually dismantling it after arriving at such a perception. The difficulty concerning the abode of good is not so much in dismantling it as in perceiving that it is in fact a limitation. This difference arises because the animal sanskaras are more firmly rooted owing to their ancient origin and long-term accumulation. It is important to note that the good binds as much as the evil, though the binding of the good can be more easily undone after it is perceived as being a limitation. Analogies for overlapping sanskaras. The ego lives either through bad sanskaras or through good sanskaras, or through a mixture of good and bad sanskaras. Therefore, the emancipation of consciousness from all sanskaras can come either through the good sanskaras balancing and overlapping the bad, or through some good sanskaras balancing and overlapping the bad, and some bad sanskaras balancing and overlapping the good. If a dish is dirty, you may cleanse it by covering it with soap and washing it with water. This is like good sanskaras overlapping the bad. Now, if the dish is full of grease, one way of getting rid of the grease is to cover it with ashes and then wash it with water. Ashes are one of the most greaseless things in the world, and in a sense, the opposite of grease. So that when ashes are applied to the dish soiled with grease, it is easy to cleanse it. This is like bad sanskaras overlapping good sanskaras. If you recollect,
this
is
a bit of a difficulty to understand. Any inputs from anyone regarding this?
If you recollect, if you recollect, this was a topic of an assignment in our first read.
Yes.
Kama gave us an assignment to comment on this, and I totally agree. It still is complicated in the sense. So, any other comments? So, I think the knack seems to be in accepting soap as being positive and good, and ash as being something which is associated with dirt and hence is bad. So you're actually using something what normally is treated as bad and dirty to actually achieve an objective of cleansing. So I think that's what I took away in this read. Anybody else?
In the analogy, what Kama explained now about the 99 killing and then the 100 killing. So the 100 killing was a bad thing, even though 99 were also bad. But the 100 killing was bad, which eliminated all his sanskaras. So it was done for elimination of the sanskara load. But this was done at the not by the actual say willfully not done by that person, but it was dictated or manipulated by the Sadguru. So maybe this ash part of what we may do will have to be say directed by a Sadguru, and maybe that we should be taking a decision to a bad thing to eliminate something which is pending with us, because we will not be in the know of it.
Yeah, it's not an alibi. Let's do something bad to cover up my good sanskaras. Jai Baba, that's right, Mamaji. Yeah, that's for Sadguru to do. Yeah, that's why the process is painful. As Baba has said, the more you are in physical pain, also he has given example. That means that's good for your ultimate journey. Jai Baba. But it should not be self-inflicted, just to compensate for these sanskaras. Jai Baba.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. So realization, Kama, do you want to say anything? Given you were the one that came up with the assignment.
Yeah. Can you just repeat that question, the assignment one?
No, the question, the assignment on the ash and the grease for the vessels. So I said, do you have anything to comment on that? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's been the biggest puzzle for me myself. I have about 70 to 80% clarity, but once I, after that last time when we discussed that, I never had a chance to get it. So let me take that as an assignment and try to come up with some answer next time. Huh? Okay.
Sure. Thank you. So realization is free from sanskaras and beyond good and bad. When there is exact balancing and overlapping of good and bad sanskaras, they both disappear, with the result that what remains is a clean slate of mind on which nothing is written and which therefore reflects the truth as it is without perversion. Nothing is ever written on the soul. The sanskaras are deposited on the mind and not on the soul. The soul always remains untarnished, but it is only when the mind is a clean mirror that it can reflect the truth. When the impressions of good and bad both disappear, the mind sees the soul. This is illumination. The mind seeing the soul, however, is not the same as the soul knowing itself, for the soul is not the mind, but God, who is beyond the mind. I'll read this line again. The mind seeing the soul, however, is not the same as the soul knowing itself, for the soul is not the mind, but God, who is beyond the mind. Therefore, even after the mind has seen the soul, it has to be merged in the soul if the soul is to know itself as truth. This is realization. In this state, the mind itself, with all its good and bad sanskaras, has disappeared. It is a state beyond mind, and therefore it is also beyond the distinction of good and bad. From the point of view of this state, there is only one indivisible existence characterized by infinite love, peace, bliss, and knowledge. The perpetual strife between good and evil has disappeared because there is neither good nor evil, only the one inclusive and undivided life of God. Somebody's mic needs to go on mute. That ends this chapter, but I think this is a very, very important chapter in the sense of our journey, because it's one of the key things that Baba has brought out powerfully on this gradation between good and evil, and how good and evil and good and bad sanskaras work in our journey. Any questions, thoughts?
Last
Karthik, I think the
paragraph.
last paragraph should be highlighted. That's the really.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the essence of the whole thing. Yes.
So the last paragraph is say seeing the soul, mind seeing the soul is the sixth plane. And then the next step is the merging, that is the seventh plane.
Mananash, and then going to seventh.
Seventh.
Yeah.
So all these things are built up here together. So good and bad, elimination of them, and then becoming neutralization, all that is in the involution process till that time. So illumination is the sixth plane, and then realization is the seventh plane.
Correct.
Yeah.
Jai Baba, I think yes, what Doc Mama said is correct. In the fifth and sixth plane of involution, we know that it is the mental planes where the mental body is being used. And here we see God. In the fifth plane, it's the thinking aspect. In the sixth plane, it is the feeling aspect. In fact, in the sixth plane, almost all sanskaras are eliminated except this division between the drop soul Jivatma seeing God, the oversoul, through the mind. That is why it is called illumination. And once the Guru takes you from the sixth plane to the seventh plane, then the mind is erased because sanskaras become zero. The only sanskara that is there in the sixth plane is the division between the object and the subject. The object is God, the oversoul, and the subject is the spiritual aspirant in the sixth plane. So that is the only one sanskara that needs to be eliminated, and that can only happen by the grace of the Guru. So that is why it is called illumination, and then union happens. So I think the good part, if I am not mistaken, even if you reach sixth plane, I think you are safe enough, because then when the God Speaks literature says that you actually get liberation or self-realization after the sixth plane when you drop your body. Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Jai Baba, but I'm confused here. So in the fourth plane where Baba says you have certain powers, and in the fourth stage, we are not illumined. Not we means those super souls. They are not illumined. How do they get those powers then?
Illumination is different from having powers, because the power is absolute, infinite power is about energy of the subtle body and the subtle world. So the four planes, first to fourth plane, which are, technically first plane is on the threshold between the gross plane of existence and the first subtle plane of existence. And the fourth plane is in the border of the mental fifth plane of existence and the fourth subtle plane of existence. But the issue in the fourth plane, as we know, which is the most dangerous plane, is that the mind, the power to use, the tendency to use the infinite power that you have is very much dominant. And so that is not illumination. That is just having a supernatural power, you can say. That is where supernatural experiences happen between the first plane to the fourth plane. That is why once you cross from the fourth to the fifth plane, you don't have any, not even the tendency, but you lose the power to do miracles, because in the fifth and sixth plane you are in the mental plane of existence. So there is a completely clinical and technical difference between the fifth and sixth plane and the first to the fourth plane. So illumination is only when you are seeing God. So there is I think in one of the chapters you will read later, Baba has graded each of the planes with different terms. Like we are through inspiration and then intuition, and I don't know the sequence. So that is the difference. Jai Baba.
Yeah,
in
I
this,
think in Hinduism, it's like being siddhis, we call it. And we say never get entangled in siddhis
yes.
if
Correct.
you want
Perfect.
emancipation.
Perfect.
I would like to bring this last two sentences from this last paragraph. I will read that sentence. From the point of view of the state, in this state, there is only one indivisible existence. So here the importance is given on existence, characterized by infinite love, peace, bliss, and knowledge. There is no mention of power at all here. So existence, it is love, peace, bliss, and knowledge. So power is gone at the end of, and the power, as Kama explained, is the power that can be exercised on your environment, not on God as such. To realize God, you can't use power. So what Cherry implied was, when we have power, why can't we have realization through that power? So that power is only effective against the environment we have, not for realization. That is how I look at it. Hey, Baba.
Jai Baba.
Thank you, Mama. Makes sense. Yes. Thank you.
Go ahead,
Jai
Kama.
Baba. There is a chapter called The Stages of the Path in Discourses, page number 128. And it describes in brief, So I can just say, if the pilgrim advances still further, he arrives at the fourth plane. The merging into the fourth plane is called Pana-i-Malakuti, or the annihilation leading toward freedom. So in fact, when I was talking about the different planes, there are certain terminologies for that. When the pilgrim arrives at the first plane, he experiences his first fana, or minor annihilation of the ego. The merging into the second plane is called fana-i-batili, or the annihilation of the false. The pilgrim is now absorbed in bliss and infinite light. Some think that they have attained the goal and get stranded in the second plane, but others who keep themselves free from self-delusion march onward and enter the third plane. The merging into the third plane is called Fanahi Zahiri, or the annihilation of the apparent. Here the pilgrim loses all consciousness of his body and his world for days and experiences infinite power. Since he has no consciousness of the world, he has no occasion for the expression of this power. This is Videha Samadhi, or the state of divine coma. Consciousness is now completely withdrawn from the entire world. If the pilgrim advances still further, he arrives at the fourth plane called Fana-i-Malakuti, or the annihilation leading toward freedom. The pilgrim experiences a peculiar state of consciousness at the fourth plane, since he now not only feels infinite power, but also has plenty of occasion for the expression of that power. Further, he not only has occasion for the use of his powers, but has a definite inclination to express them. If he falls prey to this temptation, he goes on expressing these powers and gets caught up in the alluring possibilities of the fourth plane. For this reason, the fourth plane is one of the most difficult and dangerous to cross. The pilgrim is never spiritually saved, and his reversion is always possible until he has successfully crossed the fourth plane and arrived at the fifth. The merging into the fifth plane is called Fana-i-Jabruti, or the annihilation of all desires. Here, the incessant activity of the lower intellect comes to a standstill. The pilgrim does not think in the ordinary way, yet he is indirectly a source of many inspiring thoughts. He sees, but not with the physical eyes. Mind speaks with mind, and there is neither worry nor doubt. He is now spiritually safe and beyond the possibility of a downfall, and yet many a pilgrim on this exalted plane finds it difficult to resist the delusion that he has attained godhood. In his self delusion, he thinks and says, I am God, and believes himself to have arrived at the end of the spiritual path. But if he moves on, he perceives his mistake and advances to the sixth plane. The merging into the sixth plane is called Fana-i-Mahabhuvi, or the annihilation of the self or lover in the beloved. Now the pilgrim sees God as directly and as clearly as an ordinary person sees the different things of this world. This continual perception and enjoyment of God does not suffer a break even for an instant. Yet the wayfarer does not become one with God the infinite. If the pilgrim ascends to the seventh plane, he experiences the last merging, which is called Fana Phila, or the final annihilation of the self in God. Through this merging, the pilgrim loses his separate existence and becomes permanently united with God. He is now one with God and experiences himself as being none other than God. This seventh plane Fanafila is the terminus of the spiritual path, the goal of all search and endeavor. Yeah, Baba.
That's good.
As always, awesome. Come on. Perfect reference. Yeah, so I think if there are no questions, we can wrap up on this chapter. Can we?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'll just take a pause here, and we'll do the Trello bit. 1 second.